You've just received the date for your next job interview. No doubt you have a pang of anxiety and you're already begun to practice some of the answers that you might get during the interview. Today we're going to explore the other language that's important to practice, and that is our body language. And specifically, we're going to look at 7 body language tips that you need to use in your next job interview. When it comes to body language that we should use during a job interview, 2 things are important. One is body language that helps us create warmth and body language that helps us look competent. Today we're going to explore that with 7 tips that you must incorporate for your next job interview. Stay tuned because I also want to give you a link to a free e-course on emotional intelligence. This will help you both understand the importance of emotional intelligence and give you practical tools on how you can expand your level of emotional intelligence. As human beings, when we're trying to create an impression, there are 2 underlying questions that everyone seeks to find the answer to. The first question is this person a friend or a foe? Is this person friendly? And so when we're hiring someone, we want to know, is this person friendly? Is this person going to get along with other people? But the second question is this person competent? Do they know what they're talking about? Are they able to do the job they're being asked to do? Now, what's interesting about both these questions is that they also show up in our body language. And today we're going to look at 7 tips, 7 different areas of body language that really help us answer these questions and come across as someone who is both warm and capable and someone who is immensely hireable. Tip number 1. Let me ask you this question. When does the interview begin? Well, if you answer that question the moment I sit down in the interview room, you're wrong. It's actually the moment you walk in the building. You see, what's important is that we create an impression the first time we enter the building. Very often we're waiting for an interview. And I have seen people in a waiting room be totally different from how they show up in the work. I've asked the receptionist at times, give me an impression of that person. And it's incredibly interesting that at times there's a disconnect with how that person showed up in the waiting room, with how they showed up in the interview room. So make sure that when you show up for an interview, that you are always on, that you realize that every impression that you give is being read by others and creates an impression. The second area is our posture. Now, our posture tells us a number of different things. It signals to others, how confident am I? How do I feel about the environment around me? How do I feel about the people around me? And what we notice with people who are feeling confident is that their posture is open. Their posture is ready and receptive. And these are important things because what we want to signal to other people is that indeed we are receptive. You know, when we look at someone who is standing erect, who has open body language, who's not protecting or feeling defensive, who's not blocking themselves, the impression we get is that person actually is comfortable in their setting. They want to be here and they know they want to be here. You know, I mentioned the word blocking there, and that's incredibly important. Very often, whenever we feel nervous, whenever we feel that we lack confidence, what we'll do is we'll actually put something in front of us to block ourselves. In other words, to protect ourselves. And sometimes this is done just with our arms, but also it can be done with a bag, or it can be done with an iPad or a device. So be careful that your posture signals to another person that I am confident and that I'm open. The third is the smile. You know, I mentioned at the beginning that there is some underlying questions. And one of the underlying questions is about warmth. And it is this person friendly? The smile as an emotion is the emotion that can be seen from the furthest distance. The showing off the teeth mean that we can see the emotion further than any other emotion that a human being shows. Now, that's important because it gives the impression that I am coming here as a friend. I'm coming here as someone who is warm and someone who is friendly. Now, it's very easy when we're feeling nervous or anxious to lose our smile, to become very serious. but we almost have to make ourselves smile. Whenever you're approaching your interview, just think of something that brings a friendly reminder and that you can smile at the person. Because one of the other things about smiling is that it is contagious. Smiling is literally caught by other people. You know, just like the pandemic that's been going around the world for the last 18 months and is contagious and invisible, our emotions are also contagious. People literally catch the emotions that we put into the universe. And so therefore, if we are happy, if we are smiling, it's almost unavoidable that a person will smile back at us. And this creates a wonderful impression of warmth and friendliness. The fourth tip has to do with our handshake. Now, I am assuming that we are back into in-person meetings once again, and that handshaking has returned. You know, if there's a skill that we're going to have to learn after the pandemic ends, it is how do you shake hands, because we've lost the art. Now, when it comes to shaking hands, I want to give you a really important tip, because the last thing that you want to do is to go to a person and offer them a handshake that is much too firm and causes pain, or is much too limp and causes the other impression. When it comes to shaking a hand, wait till the other person grabs your hand and assess the strength of their handshake and respond with like strength to them. This way, you're assessing the strength of their handshake and that you are returning the same to them. It's a wonderful way of really gauging how strong a handshake should be. And when you shake someone's hands, it's also really important to look them in the eye. That's the most confident and the direct and warm way of introducing yourself to someone else. The fifth tip, as I already mentioned, is eye contact. Eye contact is another way that we signal to another person that indeed we are connected with them. Now, eye contact is also very culturally based. And so in different cultures have different levels of eye contact. In our Western culture, it's about 60% of the time. Now, the problem is if it becomes less than 60%, then it gives the impression to another person that in some way we are avoidant, that in some way we're not recognizing them, and that we don't want to have eye contact with them. If it goes above 60%, well, there's a danger that it creates kind of a creepy feeling that this person is staring at me, and we want to avoid that as well. I also want to add a note to those who are interviewing people in a diverse setting. You know, very often we are interviewing people from different backgrounds and different cultures. And so often body language is culturally different depending on the country that they come from. Eye contact is one of those cultural differences that we need to be very sensitive to. We know, for example, that people from the Far East tend to have a level of eye contact that is less than in the Western world. And specifically about one element of showing deference to those in authority or to those who are elder. And so we have a situation here of a job interview. You're meeting someone who is in authority, someone who has the power to hire you. And so very often a way of showing respect in those cultures is to avoid direct eye contact. Now, that could be very well misinterpreted. And so it's important for us to really be aware of the context and the culture that the person is coming from as we make an assessment of them. So that's the first 5 tips. And before we move to the final 2, I want to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, to click on the bell. You'll be reminded of new episodes. I produce a new episode every week on a different topic that has to do with communication, emotional intelligence, just like the one we're reviewing today. If you do have an idea or suggestion, please use the comment button below and give me some of your ideas, and I'll be more than happy to dialogue with you, and we'll come up with a future episode which will specifically answer your question or suggestion. Tip number 6 is your voice. You know, your voice is incredibly important for an interview. Science shows that we like what's called thick voices. And there are 2 elements that go into producing a thick voice. That is our ability to have enough breath or oxygen in our system, and also having an open stance. Because what's happening is we're taking in enough breath, which then reverberates against our open body posture. And so those elements are incredibly important when it comes to creating a voice that is pleasant to listen to. So when it comes to voice, breathing becomes important. Now, when we're anxious or nervous, one of the things that happen is that our breath moves further upwards in our body and we begin to breathe in the upper regions here. The problem with this is that it becomes very shallow and that we're really not taking in enough breath for that resonant voice that we want. The second thing is that if we're nervous or feeling a little defensive, our body begins to close, thus not giving space. So what we want to try and do is, first of all, create an open body space and also take deep breaths. And we'll find that the quality of our voice improves when we're able to do that. Now, there's another little exercise that I often refer to that I think can be really helpful during a job interview, especially in this area, and it's called the 7-second reset. And this is a moment for you to really reset. If you think that your body language is not appropriate, if you think that in some way you need to reset what you're doing, take 1 second to put your feet on the ground. That grounding of your feet takes you away from some of the emotionality that you might be feeling. Seconds 2, 3, and 4 is breathing in. As you breathe in, you're making an assessment. And what you're making an assessment of during your interview is, where are you in your body language? Have you moved forward or backward? Are you engaged? How's your body posture? Is it open? Is it closed? And then seconds 5, 6, and 7 is making adjustments in the moment so that your body language reflects your desire to be confident and to be warm. And number 7 is the clothing that we choose to wear. You know, our clothing gives a signal. In the world of nonverbal communication, we call it ornaments. And really, clothing has the power to influence the mood that we feel. So just think about it. It's Sunday morning, you're waking up, you're tired, you want to laze around the house. What kind of clothing do you wear? Probably sweats and a t-shirt. Or you're going to an important function, you're going to a graduation, you're going to a wedding. What you wear more formal clothing. And that clothing signals a mood. It signals that you are going to an important event. So what's really important is when we go to a job interview is to wear clothing that makes us feel confident. What kind of clothing do you have that makes you show up feeling like $1 million? That's the clothing that you should wear, because we want the clothing to help us and put us in the mood of confidence. Now, there's another little exercise that I want to suggest to you as well right before your interview. And that is, I want you to take a few moments, maybe in the car outside of the interview. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think about a moment in your life when you felt incredibly confident, when you felt incredibly powerful, when you felt everything in your life was going the right way. And I want you to experience that moment, because what you'll find is when we begin to experience those moments, our body language begins to follow suit, begins to feel more confident, just like we did in those moments. One final question some people have is, well, you know, many job interviews are now remote. What do I do in that setting? If our job interviews by remote video, for example, on Zoom, every single thing that I've mentioned today also applies, except of course for handshaking. You know, especially as well when you get on the Zoom call, the last thing you want to do is to be searching around at the volumes right or the cameras on, etc. You know, Zoom has a function before you join the call that you can test the audio, you can test the video. Make sure the first time you appear on that interview screen that you are looking confident and are ready. So there you have 7 tips that you want to incorporate so that you can appear warm and competent in your next job interview. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that I had a special free gift for you. And indeed, you'll find it in the link below. It's a link to my Emotional Intelligence Crash Course, which is an on-demand course which explores emotional intelligence and offers you different tools and skills that you can incorporate so that you can grow your level of emotional intelligence. So we've just explored everything you should do for your next job interview. Next, I invite you to watch the video which explores some things you should never do in your next job interview.